Okay, sorry if I'm a minute late or so. I have had a really long day. So I'm gonna wait a few moments, wait for people to get on, and then we're just gonna head on. I was told that I should, or it was suggested to me that I don't just start immediately, that I wait for people to come on. As you come on, say hi, get to know your neighbors. We are all family here. We are a Real Progressives family. April, Joe, good to see you all. Yeah, we're getting people on. I did promise I would wait before getting into it. Tonight's discussion is inspired by a conversation I almost had. I was in the middle of having online, and life just got away from me and I wasn't able to finish it, but I felt it really seriously needed to be addressed here, if not there. I don't know, maybe I will write another paper and put it there. Keep coming on. Hey Les, how you doing? Joni's on, fantastic. There we go. Hector. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Let us get to the critical mass. I always love that. Every time I hear the words critical mass, I feel like there's a church service somewhere going terribly wrong. That's just the way my brain works. Becky! Gonna be checking out your live stream from earlier today, Becky. Unfortunately, I worked during the daytime, so I couldn't do it, but I always look forward to it. Rocco. Yo, Geoff! Give it about another minute. I'll just, give the overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. I've had no fewer than 4 people privately message me asking what is MMT. And I, send them to the usual places, Real Progressives, Steve Grumbine, Stephanie Kelton, Warren Mosler, Deficit Owls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I was getting so many from people that had seen my streams, and I don't really talk a lot about MMT when I'm talking about it. I sort of talk as if I'm talking to people who already know. And I realized I shouldn't have done that. I should have, at the very least, during one of my streams, I should have gone into an in-depth discussion of what MMT is, and move on from there. Okay, we got a whole bunch of people on. Barbara, nice. Ronnie. So I'm just going to start. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to have an overarching discussion about what MMT is. What it is and what it is not. And what you'll hear from people that espouse MMT over and over and over again, hi Allison, that MMT is nothing more, nothing less than an accurate description of the monetary system. And it describes it accurately in this country, the United States. Teresa. It describes it accurately in Canada, in England, in all countries that have a fiat system. And people think it stops there, but no, it doesn't. Hey, Teresa. It also describes the monetary system in countries that don't have their own floating fiat currency. So the Eurozone, for example. It's just simply a description of how... Hey, Geoff, switch to my personal icon. How you doing, Joe? It's just a description of how money is created and how money is deleted. How money enters the economy and how it leaves the economy. That's all it's doing. At its heart, MMT does not have prescriptions for what you should do with that knowledge. But people that espouse MMT overwhelmingly do. I have prescriptions. Steve Grumbine has prescriptions. Joe Firestone has prescriptions. Stephanie Kelton, Warren Mosler. These guys have, prescriptions for what we should be doing. And it doesn't matter if those prescriptions are progressive. Doesn't matter if they're conservative. Doesn't matter if they're libertarian. It doesn't matter. And before I get into what MMT is, I want you to keep in mind that MMT exists as a functioning system right now. Mark, you missed the blanket. Oh, come on. Teresa was the one that got me to get rid of it. Mark, you can't tell me you love the blanket. But MMT exists now. It exists now and is used now. Doesn't matter what system you run, if it's a communist system or a democratic system, it doesn't matter. It describes the economy. It describes the currency. So MMT is not something we need to start using. MMT, if you want to put it in such terms, is something we need to start understanding so that we can use that knowledge for a progressive agenda, for a truly progressive agenda. So what is MMT? MMT is the understanding that federal taxes do not fund federal programs. They don't. The federal government is the sole monopoly issuer of the currency. How do we know this? Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution spells it out quite clearly that the Congress and no other body, Congress, shall create the currency, which in our case is the US dollar. It shall set its value. So if we were on a gold standard, for example, Congress would determine how much gold each dollar would be worth. Is it 30 ounces? Is it a pound? Is it 40 ounces? Is it 25 and a half ounces? Congress decides. Congress mandates how much it's going to be worth, including what it's worth right now, which is zero. In 1971, Nixon removed the gold standard. We are no longer on a gold standard. Gold is simply a precious commodity. That's it. And if you want to exchange your dollars for gold, you can go somewhere and buy it. But you're not going to be able to go to a Federal Reserve and take your $20 and expect to get gold back. You can get change back in US funds. But that's it. That is it. If you want to be able to use those US dollars to get other currencies, to whatever bank will furnish, those dollars or euros or whatever, you can purchase that. But the dollar, the US dollar, is the top of the food chain. That is the number one, form of high-powered money in this country. US dollars. Nothing else. So the other thing that Article 1, Section 8 outlines, and outlines very clearly, is that the federal government shall levy taxes. Now this has fundamental consequences. If you are in that much control of your currency, you control everything on the macro level. You create the dollar, you set its value, and you ensure the need for that dollar through taxation. The very fact that you owe a tax in a unit of account that the federal government determines, you now need to have that unit of account. If the federal government says, you owe me a tax, you must pay me money every year, or 4 times a year if you do it quarterly. But you owe me a tax, and I will only accept payment of that tax in this currency, US dollars. So right at that moment, right at the moment that you realize that you have a tax obligation that can be satisfied with nothing else but the US dollar, now you are fundamentally unemployed. Now you have to find a job that will pay you in US dollars. Now you're going to spend your life chasing US dollars. Understand that for every other want and need you may have, you can satisfy the payment obligations for those wants and needs with some other form of currency. Goods, services, what have you. I know, for example, that when I lived in Vermont in the early 90s, Canadians would very often come down. They wouldn't have US dollars. They would have Canadian dollars. And many stores in Burlington, Vermont would accept payment in Canadian dollars. They would simply make an exchange rate not favorable to you. You could satisfy some, obligations with foreign currency. That is a possibility. But you have to find people that will accept that. So if you want to get your food and your shelter and your clothes and all these things that you need, and a lot of things that you want, you have no currency of any description whatsoever, you want to trade goods and services for that, you can do that if you can find people that have what you want, that also coincidentally need what you have. That's a mighty tall order. That's a huge pain in the ass, but it is possible. But there's one obligation, financial obligation that you have for which that will never work. And that is the federal government tax. You will not be able to satisfy your tax obligation with anything other than US dollars. And they enforce that with deprivation, with prison, with the confiscation of your home and your car and all kinds of other wonderful things that you worked your ass off to be able to get it. So you need that money. You absolutely positively need that money, and the government will not accept any other currency. No Bitcoin, no foreign currency, nothing. Whatever other currency you have, you will have to convert into US dollars first before you can give it to them. And if you don't, they'll confiscate your house and they'll sell it. And people will think, oh, that's an example of the federal government, taking your US dollars because they actually need it. No, they don't. They sold your house because they don't need your fucking house. They don't want your house. You didn't pay your tax obligation. Therefore, you don't get to keep your house. That is the contract. But your taxes don't pay for anything. First and foremost, taxes are good to drive the currency. It allows the federal government to control the economy. It allows them to help control the market. In a free market, yes, we do have a free market, but there must be rules and procedures so that people aren't getting dicked around. The federal government is falling down on their job in this respect, but functionally speaking, this is the way it's supposed to work. And taxes help them to do this by ensuring that everyone needs the same unit of account. And they can utilize that unit of account to pay for other goods and services within the economy. It keeps things predictable, it keeps things easy to manage, but it doesn't pay for anything. Nothing. Like I said in my last show, if you can answer me this, if you were able to print your own money and you were able to tell the world, this is my money, this is what it's worth, and you were able to enforce the use for that currency, and everyone that you came into contact with wanted your currency, needed your currency, why in God's name would you ever need a revenue stream? Why would you ever need that money back? You pay it into the economy, people get it, people use it to pay for goods and services, and 4 times a year if you do it quarterly or once a year, you pay taxes. You give some of that money back. But if the federal government needs no revenue stream, what does it do with those taxes? Deletes them. It's just a spreadsheet. They spend into the economy. You go off and you do what you do. You be a good consumer and you spend and you spend and you save and you spend and you spend and you spend and you save and you spend. And then you give some money back. And you have now fulfilled your tax obligation. And just as the federal government will mark up your account if you get a refund, they will simply debit your account if you owe them tax. It's debiting and crediting, debiting and crediting. It's all ones and zeros. That's all it is. That is the first function of taxes, to drive the currency, to make you need the currency. That's what makes the currency valuable. It has no intrinsic value in and of itself. Food has intrinsic value. Clothes have intrinsic value. Homes have intrinsic value. Cars, things, objects that you need to live, to survive, to have a good time, to do what you do. These have value. It's what your dollars can purchase that have value. The dollars themselves don't. Not like it did when we had a gold standard, where the dollar was actually worth something else. Now it's just the top of the food chain of dollars, of currency in the US. That's it. So MMT simply acknowledges and describes this system. It acknowledges that federal taxes do not fund federal spending. It further goes on to describe other entities within the economy, you, me, corporations, states. Everyone else that is not the federal government are currency users. You use the currency. You can't create it. If you do, that's called counterfeiting, and you'll do a lot of time in prison. The federal government issues the currency. Everyone else uses the currency. That includes states. That includes municipalities. So when you have a municipal tax or you have a state tax, that does pay for stuff. Because anything that a city wants to do or anything that a state wants to do, they do have to raise money. Because you don't have Massachusetts dollars, you don't have New Jersey dollars, you don't have Vermont dollars. New York City has no money of its own. So for anything that it wants to do, whether it be transportation or whatever it happens to be, it doesn't matter. Whatever the state wants to do, whatever the city wants to do, they need to raise money. They do need a revenue stream. They do need to raise your taxes. They do need to float bonds and spend it. They do need these things. They are currency users, not issuers. So MMT describes that as well. MMT acknowledges that but one entity creates the dollar and can therefore never go broke. It creates the dollar and enforces its need. Therefore, it can always pay for whatever it wants that is for sale in its own currency. So when we say that Medicare for all is going to cost X amount of dollars, let's just pick a number. It's going to cost $75 trillion. Who knows? I don't know. But in order to pay for everything that we would need, for every medical need and any medical want, doesn't matter, it could be as generous as we want it to be. Whatever it's going to cost to build the hospitals, to train the doctors, to pay for all the pharmaceuticals and pay for all the medical manufacturing that's going to have to happen, $75 trillion. Fair enough. Then the federal government just simply marks up the accounts. Who is going to be getting this money? Who are we paying to do that? They will instruct the Treasury to start crediting accounts. And the Federal Reserve will put reserves into the bank accounts of those entities and will make sure that the checks clear, that all the payments clear. That's all this is. It's very, very simple, but difficult to get your brain around when you have been told for 40 fucking years that the federal government is broke, that the federal government can't afford to pay for X, Y, and Z, that the federal government is just like a household, that the federal government cannot, as a household cannot, spend more than it takes in revenue, that a federal government is going to have to borrow from some other institution in order to be able to pay for federal spending. I'm going to get to why that would be the case, why they would tell us that in a moment. But that's why it's difficult for your average, everyday individual to get their brain around the idea that the federal government is not like a household. You have to first confront the idea that your government has been lying to you, that the media has been lying to you. Now, that is not a huge hill to climb for most people. I think a lot of people understand that the federal government lies to you all the goddamn time. And that the media, especially the mainstream media, has been bought and paid for by corporate interests long ago. And you have to really parse everything that they say to you. And you have to find multiple sources just to make sure that they're not fucking with you. I don't think that's a tough hill to climb for a lot of people. Except in this particular instance, it's very difficult for people, I think, to get their brain around the idea of how the macroeconomy works, because it's an easy sell. It was an easy lie for these people to say to us that this is how the economy works, because that's how it works for you. You can't spend money that you don't have. You understand intrinsically, because you live it, that if you don't have the money, you have to borrow if you want to spend, or you have to somehow earn more. You better get that promotion. You better get that new job. You better get the education so you can get the promotion or the new job. Or you're going to have to borrow from the bank, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's an easy thing to understand because that's our lives. We live it. We don't have to think about it. That just makes sense. So for 40 years plus, this happened in 1971. I'm 48. I was born in 69. For 46 years, 45 years, they've been lying to us. Now, I'm willing to go out on a limb and give them the benefit of the doubt and realize that maybe it took them about 5 or 10 years to really catch up. That maybe they didn't, that the media at least, was a little bit slow on the uptake to realize the implications of what it meant to be off the gold standard. But I'm not going to be more generous than that. After that amount of time of investigative journalism, back in the days when we used to actually have investigative journalism, to not realize that this is not how the federal government operates, that this is not how federal spending operates, I'm sorry. I'm willing to believe that maybe some journalists wanted to tell the truth and could not, were not allowed, they would lose their jobs, they would lose their standing. Journalists are human too. I believe that the love of the spotlight got some of them. Once you're in that anchor desk and you're making that kind of money and you're getting that kind of attention, it doesn't feel good. Some things may fall to the wayside. I don't know. But I believe human nature is complex, and I believe the reason they fell down on the job can be very complex. I'm willing to give them the complexity, but I'm not going to let them off the cross. I'm not going to let them off the hook. Your complexity is your complexity, but your complexity has a body count. We suffer and we die for your vanity. We suffer and we die so that you can have access to power. We suffer and we die so that you can sit in a chair and have a wonderful life and be part of the 1%. I have no intrinsic sympathy for you. I can have all kinds of understanding and compassion, but you're not going to get off the hook. So we've been lied to for a long time. And they played the long game and they played it well. But it doesn't have to be that way anymore. I think once people start waking up to the idea that yes, the federal government actually has no financial constraints, I think the conversation is going to change. It's going to change in a hurry. But we also have to understand the other part of what MMT describes is that there are limitations, and we have to get our brain around that. We have to make sure that we don't go, woohoo! We can just spend until the cows come home. Because technically speaking, yes, we could. Yes, we could. We could spend as much as we want for as long as we want. It doesn't matter. But there are consequences. And the consequence is inflation. The consequence is the consequence of using up our resources. Because this is the other thing that MMT states. It's not about money. It's about resources. When we talk about Medicare for all as an example, when we talk about making sure that everyone has access and to the best possible healthcare imaginable, no matter what your needs are, no matter what you need, no matter what you want for that matter, do we have the resources, the real resources, both in raw materials and human resources? Do we have the hospitals? Do we have the clinics? Do we have the doctors, the nurses, the technical staff, the pharmaceuticals ready to go, and the medical manufacturing ready to go? Do we have all that to cover for everyone, for everything that we say we want to do? If the answer is yes, we do have it, all you got to do is mark up the accounts for the people that are going to be getting the payments to make all that. If the answer is no, then the question becomes, do we have the ability to marshal our resources and get these things? I.e., can we build the hospitals? Can we build the educational institutions and train the doctors? Yes? Then credit the accounts. Make it happen. Fine, we have all the infrastructure. We don't have enough staff. Can we train them? Can we import them? This can be part of immigration. Can we bring in what we need from outside the country? We don't have enough infrastructure. We don't have steel. Fine. Who does have steel? Let's buy it. And it won't matter how much it costs. And it won't matter in what currency they want to sell it. Even if they don't want to sell in US dollars, they'll sell it in a currency that will be convertible into US dollars. And the US government can make as much US dollars as they want, which means they can spend as many euros as they want. It means they can spend as many yen as they want. Doesn't matter. It's convertible into US currency. It can be done. It's a question of resources, exclusively resources. And as long as we are managing the economy, balancing not the books, but the economy, are we spending enough into the economy to make sure that we have enough people in the aggregate buying, and we have enough goods and services, that we're making sure that we are a productive society now to handle all the money that's flowing around there? And also, are we making the investments in our infrastructure, in our education, in our healthcare, and all these things that will guarantee that in the future we will still be a productive enough society to handle all this spending that we're doing? Because if we're spending like crazy and we still have goods and services and everyone has what they need and people can buy and can purchase with these dollars they have goods and services that they want, then we're fine. Inflation is not a problem. But if we spend too much for too long, then we don't have enough goods and services for all the money that's out there. If everyone is a billionaire and everyone can afford a Maserati and 5 houses, etc., 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 then suddenly we don't have enough goods and services. We can't possibly create that much to satisfy those kinds of needs and wants. So then we have a problem. Then we have inflation. However, we do have means with which we can deal with inflation. If inflation means there being too much money in the economy, then we can simply suck some of that back. Welcome to reason number 2 why we have taxes. Taxes drain resources from the economy. So if we're running hot, if we have full employment, everyone has a job, everyone has good money, has a good salary, everyone is purchasing, and that keeps going, and suddenly we're running into a situation where we can't keep up with the GDP, we're not producing enough, then we can suck some money back in taxes. We drain some of that demand. So, for that, we do have means to control. We can also sell bonds. We can have people sell bonds, just like they did in World War II. They sold war bonds because we had full employment. We had a hot economy. Everyone had money. So they had people buy war bonds, a means of getting people to take their money and not spend it. Same thing with retirement accounts, IRAs. There's all manner of ways in which we can get people to take their money and instead of spending it, put it aside for right now. Don't spend it right now. Spend it later, when the situation is slightly different. So we'll tax you, we'll have you put your money elsewhere. There's all manner of ways in which we can deal with inflation before we have to start thinking about cutting back on our spending. So that's the reason number 2 why we have taxes. We want to be able to control inflation. Then, of course, there's reason number 3 why we have taxes. Taxes will also help us to influence behavior. We don't want people smoking anymore. So we're going to tax smoking into the Stone Age. We're going to make buying a pack of cigarettes as expensive as buying a house. An over-exaggeration, obviously. But to illustrate the point, that we will make certain things so expensive because we as a society have decided that we don't want to see this behavior anymore. We will use economics as a means of dissuading you from being able to purchase it. So once smoking becomes so expensive that you just can't afford it, then a lot of people will stop smoking, and that's what happened. We still have a lot of people smoking, but through taxing cigarettes, we were able to reduce the amount of smoking. We were able to reduce the burden on the healthcare industry. So that's really the 3 reasons why we have taxes. So when people ask you, well, if federal taxes don't pay for spending, why do we have it in the first place? First, it drives the currency. It's the reason you need the dollar. Second, it allows us to drain reserves drain demand, from the economy. So if we have too much money in the economy, we can use taxes to be able to drain it. And the third reason is to be able to influence behavior. Most notably in the cigarette tax. Also, to redistribute wealth, to be sure. We fought a war to make sure that we don't have an aristocracy. So if we feel that, wages are falling and, the 1% are running away with all our money, we can take that back in taxes. There are things that we can do. The purpose of a tax has to have exactly that, a purpose. But that purpose will never be because we need to pay for Social Security. We will never need a tax to be able to pay for Medicare for all. We will never need a tax to be able to pay for free education. And any politician that says, I got a way to get us free education and this is how we're going to do it, and their plan includes taxing the rich, fuck them. Because this person is one of 2 things. Either they don't understand the macroeconomic reality and think they actually need to raise taxes to be able to pay for things, or they don't really want it to happen in the first place. Why is that? What happens when we are told that we need to raise taxes on the rich, or we need to cut this program to be able to pay for that program? Well, now we all start fighting at each other. We start, we want to have the poor against the rich. We'll have class warfare. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. They get us to do their work for them. They want to be seen as wanting to do the right thing, but they don't actually want it to happen. It's a very sneaky way of making sure that they get what they really want while making you believe that they're on your side. To that end, I've had a lot of deep conversations with a lot of people that are in a position to know, and we do have a lot of people in Congress right now signing on to Medicare for all. But the people that I'm talking to are having conversations with these people, and they're discovering that there's no plan. That basically what it boils down to is they know the way the wind is shifting publicly, and they want to be exactly on that side, but they don't want to see it get done. They're not motivated to get it done. They're motivated to make Donald Trump look bad. They're motivated to make Republicans look bad. And that blows my mind. You don't need to give a helping hand to Republicans and Donald Trump to make them look bad. They look bad already, just by virtue of what they do. I've never seen a group of people more egregiously reach for the stars when it comes to screwing over as many people as they possibly can. I've never seen anything like it. It is maddening. And you think you need help? You think you need to help these people look bad? You have eyes, you have ears, you understand how horrible this is. And your entire platform is vote for me because I'll help them look bad. Don't look to me for a solution to actually help you out in your life. But while you're wallowing in your pain and your despair as you're surfing through channels, you come on MSNBC or CNN, I'll make you feel good by letting you raise your fist and go, yeah! It's very cathartic. But at the end of the day, you still don't have health care. And if you do have health care, you're still going broke because your health care was for shit. We still don't have green energy, but isn't it wonderful to make Donald Trump look like an asshole? You still don't have immigration policy. You still don't have free college education. We still have poverty coming out of our ass all over this country. But isn't it wonderful to know that Donald Trump looks like an idiot and the Democrats helped make that happen? How wonderful for you. What a wonderful platform to run on. Where can I vote? This is the finger I'm going to use to do it. So when they tell you that they need to raise taxes to be able to afford whatever social program you say you want and they're responding to, what they're really telling you is, I don't want to do it, but I don't want to tell you that I don't want to do it. The ones you can support, the ones you can support freely are the ones who say, yes, Medicare, healthcare is a right. It should be available to every citizen. Quite honestly, it should be available to anyone that's on our shores that need it because we have no fiscal limitations about who we can help and who we can't. But if they say that this is what they support, how are they going to do it? Appropriations. They're simply going to write a bill that states this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to take care of, this is how much it's going to cost, and the federal government will put in the bill that the Treasury will mandate to make the payments, and they will mandate to make sure that all debt obligations, all debt instruments are taken care of. No taxes need to be raised. No one needs to be lowered either. Not for the purposes of spending. When they write a bill, when they come to the determination about what they're going to do, MMT states very clearly that the moment they decide what they're going to do, the money is created. It never, ever, ever needed tax revenue. It never has to have a section that says we're going to raise taxes here in order to be able to pay for this bill. MMT states very clearly that that is not necessary. They can do it. They can write a bill that says we're going to spend $2 trillion and this is the revenue stream with which we will get $2 trillion. They can do that. There is nothing stopping them from putting shackles on themselves, from putting shackles on us. But MMT states very clearly that that is not a requirement. Congress need only state what they want to do, how much it's going to cost. That's it. Then it gets done. Then the Treasury starts making payments. Then the Fed starts loading up reserves. Then the Fed makes sure that payments get cleared. That's it. They need not float any bonds if they don't want to. The bonds are useful. But they don't have to for the purposes of spending because bonds don't get spent. Treasury bonds don't get spent. They're a means of helping the Fed control the interest rate. They are a means of helping us drain reserves from the economy so that we can avoid inflation. And ultimately, quite honestly, they're a means of corporate welfare. Look in the books of just about any corporation, they have a lot of their money tied up in T-bills. Why? Because it's a steady stream of income. It's free money. It is free money for corporations. So I have no illusions that we're ever going to get rid of the debt. But that brings us to the next thing about MMT, the deficit and the debt. What it is, the deficit is simply nothing more, nothing less than the difference between how much the government spent into the economy versus how much they took back in taxes. That's all it is. That's all the deficit is. And when we start saying, oh my God, the deficit is so huge, it's kind of like saying, man, that guy's penis is really huge. And you say that like it's a problem. I don't know too many guys that would think that would be a problem. Crude, yes. True, unfortunately. So when they say the deficit is a problem, they don't understand what it is. Because they are still conflating a federal fiat government with a household. They still think that the federal government needs to be able to spend within its means, that it needs to be able to spend nothing more than what it earns, and nothing could be farther from the truth. So the federal government deficit spending is only a problem if that were actually true. So let's take it, for example, a state government. Very difficult, or rather very easy to understand that you don't see the difference because you just see government and you see government. One is federal and creates its own money. The other one is state and it uses that money. So a state government, New York State, for example, deficit spending, that's a problem. Potentially, depending upon how much return they expect to get on their investments. So a deficit for a state is potentially a problem. But if they invest that money wisely and they raise revenue, then that's okay. But a federal government running a deficit intrinsically is not a problem. It can be a problem depending upon where they're spending. For example, the tax bill. They say it's going to cut $1.5 trillion in the deficit. Who the hell cares about the deficit? I care about where that spending went. It's not getting to us. It's not getting to the people who will actually spend that money, who will actually then be able to raise the GDP of this country by increasing productivity, because every time you spend, that's someone's income. Every time you spend, businesses have to be able to hire to match the demand. So the federal government deficit spending, if they deficit spend properly, if they deficit spend that will actually produce jobs, that will produce GDP, that is a good use of federal resources. Call it federal money if you want. Please, just don't call it taxpayer money. I understand the desire to say, I don't want my taxpayer dollars to go to this, I don't want my taxpayer dollars to go to that. I understand that. If we were actually taking your money specifically to fund something, that would have validity. And you can use that statement if you're talking about your state taxes. I don't want my state taxes to go towards this and state taxes to go towards that. But if you're using that statement for federal spending, you're using it wrong. You don't understand. And so many of the arguments that we get into with people over federal spending could be expunged if they understood that we're not spending your personal money. It is your resources, the resources of your country. So when I say I don't want a fucking border wall with Mexico, it's not because I don't want to have my money go to spend on it. It's because I don't want to waste time and resources on something that is meaningless and pointless and used to just basically erect a monument to a man's ego. I'm not interested in that at all. But I have no interest in complaining about it because I'm worried that my money is going towards that. Because I know that it's not. It's not my money. It is my country's resources, and that is mine. So I have good reason to say I don't want that. I have good reason to say that's a shit idea. But it's not because it's my money. It's because it's my country's resources. And those resources could be better used somewhere else. Anywhere else, quite honestly. All those resources could be used to build the world's largest toilet and huge roll of toilet paper to deal with the shit that's coming out of the White House. That would be a better use of our resources. But let's actually try to save some fucking lives. How about that? How about we actually go towards green energy? How about we say to the fossil fuel industry, you have been getting tax breaks for generations. And you're killing the country, you're killing the planet and the ecosystem. We want to live. Thank you very much. Go off and make a profit. But we are going to invest heavily in green energy. And we won't stop investing until we have completely revolutionized the energy grid, that we have completely changed the way we fundamentally power this country. And we're never, ever, ever going to fund fossil fuels ever again. If you want to be able to make a profit in this country using fossil fuels, God love you, and so do we, but we're not going to pay you $1 to be able to do it. We're going to fund something that's going to save this country, and people want that. People would rather put their energy resources into something that will benefit them and their community and their country. Given the choice, they will choose it every time. You will lose. Same thing for education. Same thing for infrastructure. Same thing for a federal job guarantee. Same thing for anything that we want, including the military-industrial complex, if that's what we want. Because this is the point. MMT is not inherently progressive. MMT is not inherently conservative. It simply describes the monetary system, and we get to decide what we're going to do with that. We get to decide what kind of country we're going to be. We get to decide if we care about our neighbors, or if we care about our community, we care about our environment. We get to decide. And for the last 40 years plus, we have not been actively making decisions along those lines. We have allowed people in our names to make these decisions. And we have allowed oligarchs to be able to purchase these people to make decisions in their name and make it look like it's in our name. We need to start recognizing this. We need to start fighting back against this. And though it may boil you in some fashion, I have made a commitment to make sure that I will follow policies and not politicians. Because a politician inherently cannot be trusted. A politician inherently has two obligations. One, to look like they're doing something, and two, to make sure they are doing something, just not for you. So until that situation is irreparably changed, and we have public funding of all elections, I can't trust any politician, anyone. I don't care. I don't trust you. I will hold your feet to the fire, and I will find candidates that will actually understand macroeconomics and who also believe in what I believe. And I will fight to the death for that. Never for them. And if that person happens to be a Republican, that's a tough sell. That is a majorly tough sell. But I'm open to it. But that's an uphill battle that I don't envy. But if the uphill battle of a Republican convincing me that they actually care about, people and understand MMT and they want to be able to pay to the public purpose, if that kind of an uphill battle is climbing, the Himalayan mountains, then a Democrat trying to tell me the same thing is basically just like climbing the Rockies. It's not as bad as climbing the Himalayas, but it still sucks. Good luck. Now, having said that, I don't hate Republicans. I don't hate Democrats. I don't. I hate what they're doing. But both parties, will be able to find examples either now or in their past when good things happened under their name. But you can't rest on your laurels. You can't. You have to fight every day for our respect. You have to fight every day for our votes. You have to convince us every day with your actions, not your words, with your actions, that you are serious, that you are committed, that you understand the macroeconomic realities, you understand MMT, and you understand the needs of the people, what we need, what is it going to take to create the jobs, to create the healthcare, to create the infrastructure, to create the conditions under which we can thrive and not just simply limp along. You've got to prove it every day. You proved it on a Monday, you're proving it again on a Tuesday. Because if you don't, you're back to square one. I understand that everyone has a bad day, but this is not the time for bad days. We need results. We need people of action. We need people with backbone. The current crop of Democrats in there that just gave in, abandoned DACA, fuck you. Sometimes you got to take a stand and sometimes it's going to hurt. But when are you going to stand up and do something? When are you going to stand up and take a principled stand and make sure that your voice is heard and that you won't go home until what you need is accomplished? Because everyone has a soft spot. You find it, you exploit it, you get it done. I'm not interested in sending weakness to Washington. I'm not interested in sending bluster either. I'm not interested in sending bullies. I'm interested in sending strength. And there is a world of difference. Strength does not have to be without love and compassion. Strength does not have to be without understanding and the ability to talk, the ability to negotiate, the ability to get things done. Strength simply means that this is what we stand for. This is what we will accept. And we see what you're doing. We know what you're doing. We're going to say it to your face. We're going to say it to a camera. We're not going home until this gets taken care of. We're not going to cave simply because it's hard. We're not going to cave simply because it's easier. Those are the people we need. We have to be able to find them. And it's going to be hard because we're going to have to use our money to do it. I don't have any money. I'm a medical assistant. If you think I got money, you're barking up the wrong tree. But I give to my local candidate because he's not taking any corporate money. And I have deep respect for that because that's a tough uphill battle. And it's the only way under the current system. If you're not taking corporate money, if you're taking money from people, small donations, it's the only way we can possibly believe that what they say, they believe. Otherwise, it's just rolling a dice, taking our chances. I'm fucking tired of doing that. I'm tired of just rolling the dice and taking my chances. God, I hope this one is good. Damn it! Another crap. I don't want that. I've been down that road. I've had my heart beaten. I've had it broken. I've had it ripped out and stomped on. And people are dying. So no more. No more of that. MMT clearly states that that is not necessary. We don't need to raise money to be able to spend. And if we can get people to understand that, then we can get people to stop fighting amongst themselves. We can actually start coming to a consensus about what is important based upon what is necessary, not what is important based upon what we can afford. If you only have so much money, you have to make horrible, terrible choices. God, I remember the stories of, families in Ethiopia back in the 80s, where mothers would have to decide in the morning when they had to go to another base camp which children to take with them because they could not physically take all of them. They made a choice. to let one of their children die. Because they had to. Because if not, everyone dies. That is a horrific choice to make. And not many people in this country have to make such choices. But people do have to make choices of such natures. Can I afford a home and food and clothing and health care? Many people in this country, millions of them, can't. They have to make choices. The first thing to go, health care. And then the very next thing that happens and they have to go to a hospital, the next thing to go is a home. And then shortly after that, you're not going to be able to keep your job. And then that's it. That's the ball game. So we do have choices on a personal level based upon what our economy, our personal economy states. I've only got so much. I could only do so much. I have to make priorities. Do you honestly think you would have to make those choices if you had an unlimited supply of money? And could you bring all that economic power to bear to get your needs met? No. And that is what the federal government has at its disposal. We don't have to make decisions about DACA or CHIP. We can choose both. We get to make decisions based upon what is important, not based upon what is economically possible, what is fiscally possible. Pardon me. My dinner was amazing. We have opportunities in this country based upon our resources, based upon the incredible abundance that we have in this country, let alone the resources that we can bring to bear from other countries. We have options, tons of options, but that does come with constraints. But let the conversation be about what those constraints actually are. Let's make decisions based upon what we desire, what we want, what is important. Healthcare is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. We should have it for everyone. There should be no excuses. So the only question is, do we have the resources? That is the conversation to have. Not, well, we can't afford it. We're going to have to be able to raise taxes. That is the argument of someone who demonstrably doesn't want you to have it. So this is MMT. For further details, check out Real Progressives. Steve Grumbine and Ellis Winningham have incredible videos to describe in greater detail not only what MMT is, but the operations, of the Federal Reserve, all kinds of things. Stephanie Kelton is my hero in a life that I don't have actual heroes. Batman was the closest I came to having an actual hero. Stephanie Kelton is my hero because not only does she fight ceaselessly for MMT, just like Steve Grumbine, she explains it in a way that is the most easily accessible I've ever seen. She's the one that woke me up. Steve Grumbine and John Lancelot and Ellis Winningham and Warren Mosler, these guys all filled in the details, but when I first heard MMT, I came across Stephanie Kelton, and it was just and then all these other guys just, Randall Way and all these guys, it just totally blew my mind. And when my mind got blown, I got angry like crazy, like just could not believe what the implications of this were. And it took me, it took me a couple of weeks to be able to calm myself down. When I realized that all the people that I had been voting for weren't being beaten. They weren't even in the game. All these Democrats that I had been voting for, that I had been following, that I'd been looking for, they weren't beaten. They weren't outmaneuvered by Republicans. They weren't in it. They weren't in it to win it. Because I'll tell you this much. This is what I believe. I can't prove this, but this is what I believe. And I mentioned this last week. If you are running for public office, federally, congressional, Senate, presidential, if you are running for office and you've never been in government before, and you say that we need to raise revenue to be able to pay for this and that, I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you actually believe what you're saying. I will give you the benefit of the doubt that says that you are just like I was, because I thought exactly the same thing. I was that person. But as soon as you are in Congress, as soon as you vote for your very first continuing resolution, as soon as you vote for your very first federal disaster relief bill, as soon as you vote for your very first appropriations bill, you know. Don't tell me that you don't know where federal money comes from, who creates the dollar and who doesn't. Don't tell me that you don't understand that federal taxes don't pay for spending after you voted for those bills. You know it, you got it, and then you still came at us and said that you need to raise revenue to be able to pay for whatever. And lo and behold, whatever doesn't actually happen. You say that you want to be able to raise taxes so that you can do the wonderful work of giving us Medicare for all, that you can do the wonderful work of all this infrastructure. And then guess what happens? It doesn't happen. Because we get people that are understanding that taxes may have to be raised. And they don't want that. So we get a whole different battle going on, specifically designed to kill the bill, whatever that bill happens to be. So you don't want it. You say that it needs to be done through taxation. You're basically telling me, fuck you. I don't want to give you this bill. But I don't want to actually tell you that. I want to hopefully believe that you're still asleep, that you still don't know what's actually going on. And I'll look like a great guy or girl, as the case may be. Exactly, Dina, political theater. That's exactly what it is. That's all it is. And I want to get off that train. And I want you all to get off that train. And I want you all to go out into the world, and I want you to find people, and I want you to get them off that train. Because that train is going off a fucking cliff. We need to save lives, and we need to get people off the train. Get them understanding exactly what it is. That federal taxes are not for federal spending. That opens up a world of policy space. Whatever we want to do, we can do if we have the resources. It's about resources. So this brings me to my next topic of conversation. There was someone who responded to my first live stream. Didn't do it weeks ago when it happened. Did it retroactively a couple of days ago. And we went back and forth once. And he said something the second time that kind of blew my mind. My life kind of got away from me. I wasn't able to actually address him directly. But I decided then and there that I was going to substitute the show that I thought I was going to do today and do this. What he said was, he said that he was very moved by the town hall, that I had done against my representative, Tom MacArthur. But he was also moved to fight against socialists like myself. He believes that a government that is big enough to give you everything that you want is also big enough to take away everything that you want. To which I replied, essentially, yes, a government can take away anything you want, which is exactly what we have now. If you think we have a socialist government right now, you're fucking fooling yourself. Nothing could be further from the truth. And they take away shit all the time. They're working on doing it now. They've been working overtime trying to take away what little health care we had, trying to make sure that the disparity between the haves and the have-nots just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They keep taking away our slice of the pie purposely. They force austerity down our throats Don't tell me that they're not taking things away. So yes, government can be a problem. But that is not a reflection of government. That is a reflection on us. We always get the government that we deserve. We always get the government that we vote in. And if we don't like the government we have, it is our job, not theirs, our job, to change that. So that's what we have to do. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. We have all kinds of things in our way. We have voter suppression. We have gerrymandering. We have to overcome that. All it would take is one cycle of everyone being awake and everyone going to the polls. They can't stop an entire country. They can't stop everyone. We had barely half the country vote in 2016. That is pathetic. And you can't tell me that if they have all this gerrymandering in the world and all this voter suppression in the world and whatever the Russians did and whatever, put it all together, you can't tell me that they kept half the country away from the fucking polls. We need civic engagement. We have people that have been disenfranchised who think that they can't make a difference. We need to wake them up, shake them up, tell them that they can make a difference if they all get together with us. It starts with voting. So whatever it is that we have to do it. First and foremost, I believe, education. Wake up people. Wake them up. Wake them up to not only the ways that we're being lied to, because like I said in the beginning, it's not a tough sell for people to believe that their government and the media have been lying to them. It's a tougher sell to get them to see exactly how and why. But that's what we got to do. And then we got to get these people fired up. We got to get them, writing their Congress people, writing their senators, writing to the newspapers. We got to get them getting as many other people waking up so that when we get candidates, we can be able to teach them that we know. Make sure that they understand that we know. Make them understand that not only do we know, we're not going to be accepting your bullshit. You will pay to the public purpose. You will give us Medicare for all. You will give us free education. You will give us a 21st century infrastructure and maintain it. You will give us a federal jobs guarantee. And you will give us green energy. And this is how it's going to happen, Mr. Congressman, Mr. Senator. I'm sorry, I'm being quite sexist with my pronouns. I'm sorry. But this is how it's going to happen. We have to demand it. We have to insist it. It's nice to be polite. And if the person that is running is clearly awake and clearly understands, we can be polite with that individual when we discuss things. And we can have honest disagreements as long as we're moving forward in the direction that we want to go. But for everyone else, I am convinced that they have been counting on us being asleep. That they have been counting on us not really knowing what's going on. So we have to inform them very clearly, very loudly, not violently, but through all other means, that we are awake, that we understand, and we are not accepting what you've been selling in the past. You want to stay in office? That's fine. But you work for us now. You don't work for the oligarchs. You don't work for the Koch brothers. You don't work for Soros. You don't work for anyone but us. Sounds easy. It's really hard. So let's do what's hard. Let's do what's necessary. But anyway, to get back to this guy, he replied, saying that he doesn't think it's the government's job to give us Medicare for all. He thinks that the reason that other countries in Europe have it is because they were, lazy, and that they wanted the government to do everything for them. And he said that America is the most generous country in the world. And that while he wanted to do good for people, he thought it was best done on an individual basis. I really took exception to that. And like I said, as of yet, this was on Sunday, I think. It's Wednesday, and Monday was a bear, yesterday was no easy, and today was just really hard. So I haven't had a chance to sit and write everything that I wanted, to write. But I did put some links with this, just a smattering of things, just something to begin discussions with if you want to have these discussions about bankruptcies. All the bankruptcies that we have in this country. All the bankruptcies that are the result of medical issues. About 6 or 7 years ago, medical bankruptcies outstripped bankruptcies due to unemployment, bankruptcies due to credit card debt. It was number one. That lowered a little bit, with the Affordable Care Act, but it didn't lower it that much. And if the Affordable Care Act ever goes away, it's going to skyrocket yet again. There has been a well-known Harvard study, that states that the vast majority of Americans do not have enough savings to be able to afford as much as a $500 emergency. They don't have it. They just don't have it. Well, imagine what happens if you slip on your front porch and you don't have health insurance. Guess what happens there? That's going to cost you more than $500. That's the beginning of your road to no longer having a roof over your head. So, with all the homelessness that we have, with all the bankruptcies that happen in this country, even if it's not just because of Medicare, even if it's not because you had an accident, you had a sickness, you've had medical bills, and now suddenly you have to declare bankruptcy because you can't afford anything. That's still a lot of bankruptcies because of austerity. There's still a lot of bankruptcies because of austerity, and that is a political choice. If the government deficit spends to the degree necessary to be able to make sure that all ships rise, to make sure that everyone has a job, to make sure that everyone has a good paying job, to make sure that they're not underemployed, that they are fully employed, that they have health care, that they have housing that is available to them, to make sure that they have education so they can help rise themselves out of poverty. These are political choices. These are not economic realities inherent in the system. The system has been designed to help the people at the top and fuck the people on the bottom. Those are political choices, political decisions that have nothing whatsoever to do with necessity. But he says that charity is what's going to help this. So you'll also find links up there to charitable giving. How much is given in charities? Now, the one thing that he did say that was correct is that Americans do, on average, give a lot of money. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year, 70% of which are individual donations. So yes, America does give a lot of money. Now, one of those articles will also show that a good percentage of the individual giving is upon someone's demise. A lot of money gets given to religious organizations, so God only knows what they're turning around and doing with that. So people do give a lot of their money. And that's a wonderful thing. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I don't give a fuck. I don't. Because all that charitable giving, all that money that people are giving out of the generosity of their hearts, and I'm sure it's real. I'm sure it's a real feeling. They want to give to their community. They want to give. They want to give. They want to give. And we still, after all that, have 45,000 people die every year because of lack of access to health care. Where is the charitable giving that is preventing that? I don't care about mitigating it. I want it eradicated. I want it gone. Where is all this charitable giving that is eliminating bankruptcies? Where is all this charitable giving that is eliminating disease? Where is all this charitable giving that is giving us full employment? Where is all this charitable giving allowing us to have fulfilled lives? Nowhere. It's going nowhere. So by all means, keep giving your money. I'm not suggesting for a second that you shouldn't. What I'm suggesting is that there's not enough money in the economy in the possession of ordinary citizens to be able to rise to the challenges that we face in this country. The only one that can do that is the federal fucking government. They are the only ones that have an unlimited supply of money. Technically speaking, the federal government neither has nor has not money. But every time it spends, it creates. If it wants to eliminate poverty, all it has to do is spend into the economy. Federal jobs guarantee, Medicare for all, higher education free, everything. All these things that contribute to poverty. All these things that contribute to austerity. Eliminate the austerity, raise the roof on prosperity. It's about money. And they want to say that, yes, it is about money. We just don't have it. We just don't have the money to be able to do it. Yes, you do. The federal government has all of it. Property taxes are a huge burden on states' budgets. So let's have school funding, which is exactly one of the big reasons we have property taxes. They all go to their state school budgets. All education is now covered entirely by the federal government. We will give you all the money you need for all your educational needs. All of it. From kindergarten, from preschool, all the way through to PhDs. I don't care. As long as we have the resources to do it, it can be done. And we're not going to tell you how to spend it. We may give you some guidelines. We want to make sure that it's spent well, that it's a good investment. But you get to decide. You, the states, we will just give it to you in a block grant. And again, when we talk about block grants given from the government, like Paul Ryan for the healthcare, I got no problem with block grants. I care about Paul Ryan doing it because I know he's not going to fund it. He doesn't fucking want you to have the money in the first place. And his bill showed that in 2026, it was all going to go away anyway. It was this tiny little fuck you. I got no problem with block grants, but fully fund it. Fully fund it. Whatever is necessary, whatever it takes. This is the cost of education for everyone from boom, 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 boom. Spend it. That's fine, as long as it's not a drain on our economy. That's it. Balance the economy. Don't balance the books. It's not a household. You don't have to balance your books. You just have to balance the economy. That is it. So, there's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Once, talked about the MMT, talked about charity. And again, I'm a huge fan of charities, but it clearly is not doing enough. Because it can't. It can't. Charity on the individual basis is a Band-Aid. It is a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It's fundamentally ridiculous to expect that the individuals in this country with their own pocketbooks are going to be able to turn this around when their own pocketbooks is a reflection of how much money is in the economy. And that is a reflection of how much the government has deficit spent. And if they deficit spend less, then we have to raise our own money, including bank lending. Bank lending is, I don't want to say it's a cancer, because there's going to be any number of reasons why you want to go to a bank and get a loan. But banking has become big business. Banking has become huge, multi-billion-dollar corporations. And they make money off of us. Because if we were able to pay for the things that we want and need with our paychecks, we wouldn't need the banks nearly so much. But we can't, because wages have been suppressed on purpose, The government is trying to balance its books again, and every time they deficit spend, they don't deficit to the common purpose. They bail out Wall Street. They bail out the banks. They bail out, the big, auto companies. We see almost none of that. The economy runs on sales, for God's sakes. And the people that would actually spend their paychecks aren't getting paychecks. So if they actually deficit spend for our purpose, and we were able to get great jobs, and we were able to get great paychecks, we would be able to spend within our means. We wouldn't need to be using a credit card. But the banks like it when we use credit cards. They like it when we come to them on our knees, begging for credit, begging them to be able to get some money so that we can live the life that we're told we're supposed to. They make billions of dollars off of us. There's a reason that they don't want that shit to go away. So we have to make sure that we stand up to them. We have to make sure that we send people to Washington who will stand up to them. Who will be able to say, the buffet is over. It was wonderful while you had it. But it's fundamentally done now. Thank you very much. Ding! Goodbye. And this is going to take my last point. Self-care. Because it's taxing as all hell. It is really, really taxing. I don't think I have to tell anyone here, how hard it is knowing what we know. I've made this analogy before. Sorry, my battery is going to be running out, so I got to end this soon. It's like the Matrix. You want the blue pill, you want the red pill. And we want the truth, so we took the red pill. And there are days I would do anything to have taken the blue pill, because it's really hard knowing what I know. And I have to take what little time I have after my job and my family and all the obligations that I have just within the confines of my life to be able to do even so much as this broadcast. You got to take time for yourself, and you're all going to have to do that. You have to take time, see a movie, listen to music, meditate. Find something that brings you peace. Find something that can give you a respite from what you're going through, from what we're all going through, from the collective trauma that we're all experiencing. You got to take that time. And you got to recognize when you need it, because by the time you really need it, you're just going to collapse. You're just going to collapse. And I don't want that for you. I don't want that for any of you. I want you... I would love you to be happy. I would love you to be able to find happiness. And the thing is, from a Buddhist perspective, that's possible. Be happy and still pursue what needs to be pursued. I don't know exactly how to get there. The only thing that I'm concerned about is love. That's what I believe is the most important thing. Nothing more important than love. Which, as I've always said, is not the absence of anger. But love is what's going to get us through this. And for the purpose of this conversation, I'm talking about self-care. I'm talking about finding a way to make sure that you get from the beginning of your day to the end of the day feeling like you did something. Feeling like you did something worthwhile. And that included something that's just for you. Maybe it's just half an hour with a book. Maybe it's, a guilty pleasure of a TV show. Maybe it's, God forbid if it's a Hershey bar. That's terrible. But something that makes you remember what it means to be alive, what's important. Don't forget your family. Don't forget your kids if you have them. Don't forget your loved ones. I'm sure that you have those. Don't forget what's really important, what makes this life worth living. It's going to be more important than ever that this stuff gets taken care of, because if you are whole, if you are strong within yourself, within your heart, you can take whatever the government throws at you. You can take whatever the media throws at you. You can take the high blood pressure that wants to be knocking at your door, and you can tamp it down. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Nothing is quite so satisfying as service to someone else. It is so much better than just simply taking after yourself. Find someone and look after their needs. Do what you need to do to feel joy and happiness. And it can be really hard. And there are days when it's just not happening, but find a way. I love you guys. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. I alluded at the beginning of this that people have been writing me, asking me questions. Feel free. Hit me up with whatever you got. I'll answer any questions, or if I can't, I'll direct you into the places where I think you should find those answers. Keep in contact. Let me know what you think. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know if you have any story ideas, anything you want me to look into. I love you guys. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.